welcome to the Indigenous YouTube channel. I am Orjoma, and I'm very excited to be starting off with this new format of videos. Today I have with me Shrimoyee for this, Shrimoyee Singh, and I'm very glad that I could do the first interview with her because I don't know if you have been a regular at film festivals around the country and around the world as well. You must have heard her name already, or her film's name, which is And Towards Happy Alleys. It is something that I watched a few months ago at a film festival here in Kolkata. And I can say with certainty that it's one of the best films that I watched this year, at least, till now. Shrimoyee, just to give a quick introduction, she did her MA and PhD from Jadavpur University, which is also my college. And she shot And Towards Happy Alleys while she was doing her PhD for 7 years in Iran. It is a beautiful ode to Iranian cinema and Iranian poetry.
میخوای یه قسمت دیگر رو بخونیم؟
آره.
وقتی که اعتماد من از ریسمان سست عدالت آویزان بود و در تمام شهر قلب چراغ‌های مرا تکه تکه می‌کردند، وقتی که چشم‌های کودکانه عشق مرا با دستمال تیره قانون می‌بستند و از شقیقه‌های مضطرب آرزوی من فواره‌های خون به بیرون می‌پاشید، وقتی که زندگی من دیگر چیزی نبود، هیچ چیز به جز تیک تاک ساعت دیواری، دریافتم باید دیوانه‌وار دوست بدارم.
Hi, Shrimoyee. Hi. Let's talk about your journey. And firstly, I would like to ask you, how did this begin? Like, everyone does a PhD, but not everyone ends up making a film. How did that happen? So all this began when I was 21 and doing my master's in film studies from Jadavpur University. And, there was this module on world cinema, and then there was Iranian cinema. And, I really fell in love with the films that we were watching. And, you ask me what happened, what was it that made me decide to make a film, and I can just think of falling in love and the act of falling in love. When you fall in love, you want to, be enriched in so many ways, and you may not be able to justify everything that you're doing at that moment, but you just fall hard, right? So that happened with Iranian cinema. I really wanted to know as much as I could about it. I wanted to instantly meet the filmmakers whose films inspired me in so many ways. The resilience and the hope that these stories had really, really inspired the 21-year-old in me. And I just knew that I soon want to, gather my resources and go to Iran and meet them. So this is how it all began. And of course, it took me time. I went to Iran when I was 25. So it took me 4 years to prepare and get things together. And around the same time, I started doing a PhD project also, because I felt that, I need to study this very seriously. I need to be grounded in academics to be able to pursue something so big. It was also going to be the first time I went out of the country. It was really something big for me to do. So I wanted to cushion myself well. I wanted to learn everything about Iranian cinema that I could. And I decided that I need to go to Iran and learn Persian, because without knowledge of this language, the journey wouldn't make sense, because a lot of films have been made on Iran in India or about our countries, and it seems like it's detached. It's from a very outside position, like an outsider position, the gaze, the view is very different. I mean, I knew that I wanted the film to be very intimate. I wanted people to trust me with their stories. I wanted to meet filmmakers and I wanted them to tell me their stories. So I knew that language was key to really getting this kind of access. And that's how it all began. I went to Iran, I enrolled myself in a Persian language course, and one thing led to another. I was very, you know, headstrong about the fact that I wanted to meet people like Panahi, I wanted to meet Kiarostami, I wanted to meet other filmmakers that we don't know about. And of course, I mean, I was very, very deeply motivated by poetry also because the film is a tribute to Iranian cinema, but also Persian poetry. Because, it's interesting that when we were taught Iranian cinema in Jabalpur, in our film studies class, it was taught to us with modern Persian poetry, the poetry of Furugh, who becomes a key figure in my film, and the poetry of Sohrab Sepehri and some other modern poets, because modern poetry truly inspired this generation of new wave filmmakers such as Panahi, Kiarostami, Mahmal Baf, Majidi, and many more. And they really took they took a lot from the indirectness of poetry, the allegories, the metaphors, and tried to create a language where expression, human emotion, love, politics, all these things could be spoken about indirectly. So you see, when you watch these films, you see that films are very political, but not, directly political in the face of it. So this is something that the filmmakers took from the poets, and also Furugh was a filmmaker, a film The House is Black, which I've referred to in the film. Is one of the first, considered to be one of the earlier films of the new wave. Even when the coinage hadn't happened, it was literally a seed that grew into the new wave films much later.
وای بر ما زیرا که روز رو به زوال نهاده است و سایه‌های عصر دراز می‌شوند و هستی ما چون قفسی که پر از پرندگان باشد از ناله‌های اسارت لبریز است.
So Gulistan, Furugh, they really were the predecessors of the films that were to begin the new, or to be the new wave in Iranian cinema. So Furugh literally inspired this generation of filmmakers, and hence you see Kiarostami making a tribute to her in his film The Wind Will Carry Us, which is taken from a line of a poem, The Wind Will Carry Us. And Sohrab Sepehri is given tribute in Where is the Friend's Home, which is inspired by his poem called Musafir, or Traveler. And there's so many other references. Mahmal Baf also, refers to the poets. Yeah, I mean, it's so poetry is an essential part of expression in Iran. Because when you live in a place like Iran, you cannot express directly because you'll be killed if you do, right? So how do you then emote? How do you express yourself? How do you talk politics? How do you talk love? You do it via poetry. Poetry is deep, it's skin deep in a place like Iran. So it had to be a part of my film. You were telling me about how their films are, how you have perceived them. That it's not outrightly political because it cannot be so. I think we get that in your film as well. It's never very outrightly political, but it's so much about love and resistance that it forms a very, very beautiful tribute to the place itself. And like you were talking about Furugh's poetry, and it's, I think any film watcher, any cinephile, or how we call that, would be falling in love with Iranian cinema at some point in their lives. But get into poetry is not something that we see very commonly. And the fact that that happened along with your love for cinema made it a much more beautiful film towards Happy Annie's. So I'm intrigued to know that this was a 7 year long journey, right? And you kept traveling back and forth from Iran. So how did your perspective, or how did your stance as an individual in Iran change? Did you see it changing, or did you see, what you were capturing, or you were using a handheld camera all through the film? So, what you were capturing through your camera, did that change?
Yeah, I mean, I actually have kept the shift in the film as well. So if you remember the film, there is a major moment that happens in within the first 3 minutes of the film where, in the beginning I'm filming, but I'm mostly filming in a very like I'm just observing. And I talk about in the first 1 or 2 minutes of the film, I talk about being under hypnosis of sorts of cinema, where it feels like, I've watched all the films before I've traveled to Iran, but when I've reached Iran, it feels that, things going on before my eyes, feels like cinema, live, happening live before me. And it just, the difference is that I am a part of it. So that's the emotion that I felt, and I speak about it until this one lady in a bus looks at me directly and says, confronts my camera and says, "Are you filming me?" So I mean, that moment was shattering in so many ways. It kind of broke me from this passive observer who went to Iran falling in love with the idea of Iranian cinema, to someone who is on the field and who realizes that this is not how you can make a film. I needed to interact with people. I just couldn't put a camera and film without, knowledge. Or I just couldn't, just film the way I was. I had to interact with people. I had to interject this reality, which was unfolding before my eyes. And yeah, only then it made sense. So after that moment, I really took Persian much more seriously. I remember I had a little break, breakdown, and I remember calling my mom and saying that, I don't know how I'm going to make this film because this is what happened today. And I mean, this was just the seventh day. So I was clearly stressing out too much. Yeah. And then I just realized that I'm here only for a month. At that point, it was my first visit, and I realized that I thought that I'd be able to manage only for a month. I stayed on for 3 months later. But then I realized at that point, I was fearing that I wouldn't be able to make a film at all because I'd have to learn Persian, be fluent, speak to people. And I remember calling my mom and saying, I cannot even buy grocery. My Farsi is not great at all. I can't even do this much. How am I going to make a film? And then she said, You'll do it. You're there. You'll do it. And just like that, that moment was important enough to really change me. I really took Farsi seriously. And within the next 1 week, I could speak somehow, not fluently, but as a 5 year old or a 6 year old who has confidence to speak, but obviously makes mistakes. But henceforth, what I'm trying to say is that the visual language entirely changed. Because after that, you don't see me just filming like that anymore passively, but I become a part of the bus sequences. I basically speak to people. I speak in Farsi. I sing in Farsi. I film in a way. Basically, it becomes very verite in its technique, which means you feel the filmmaker. You hear me sing, you hear me talk, you hear me laugh, you hear me make jokes. Basically, you feel my presence. And that is the turn that the film took from, that moment where she says, Are you filming me? So I think that was very, very important.
Music becomes a very important part of the film. And I felt that, like you talked about your outsider to insider journey. While watching the film, I felt that the first time when Jafar Panahi asks you to sing a song in front of everyone else, no, one other person, I think, the shopkeeper. That's
Yeah, the sequence with Panahi
Yeah.
and the shopkeeper.
yeah. That's when I felt that you have finally become an insider.
Yeah.
Right. And you also wrote somewhere that women in Iran have not been allowed to sing
Yeah.
since 1979.
Yeah.
So, do you think it is because you were an outsider that they could ask you to sing? And it is also because you are an outsider and you could learn the language and you could sing a song. You also gained an easier access into their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. In the sense that, yeah, music does that, like, also I feel like when we make films, sometimes we need to give back in some ways to the people who are telling their stories. And everyone, all of us actually figure ways to, give something back. And for me, if I must call it my love language, was music. Some people cook, some people do other things. For me, it's music. And whenever I need to make people feel loved, I sing for them. And even the sequence with Farhad, who is the actor from Kirostami Street.
Right.
So there's a little story which I couldn't keep in the film where I was staying in a dormitory for 1.5 months when I was in Iran for the first time, and then I met him, and he he basically heard me sing, and he instantly told me that, please, why are you staying in a dormitory? Come and stay at our place, because they had an apartment on the top floor, and he and his wife both said, come and stay with us. The only clause is you have to sing for us each night after dinner. And I happily agreed. So this is the joy that music brings. I mean, also the fact that we've had so many screenings around the world, and it began with Berlinale last year in February, and after the world premiere, someone from the audience asked me to sing a song, and it was my first film. It began with Berlin. It was a big deal, and I was nervous, and I didn't know. I was nervous about the kind of questions people would ask me, but never for once did I think someone will ask me to sing. But I think this is the joy that music can bring to the lives of people around you. And I knew the power of music from the beginning, because I've been singing since the age of 4. Literally, music is second skin to me. I express through music. So I was beginning to pick up these songs, came very naturally to me. And I didn't know, honestly, when I started learning these songs, that women are not allowed to sing in Iran. I realized it much later. I mean, only when I saw Panahi and my friends really obsessing over me singing, I then found out that women, they're doing it because they haven't heard a woman perhaps sing publicly since the republic was formed. The regime came to power in 79. And so that was the joy that, of hearing a woman sing. And of course, hearing non-Iranian women sing in Persian. That also was beautiful for them. It's very interesting, because in the beginning, when I came to know that women are not allowed to sing and I'm singing, it made me feel a little uncomfortable. But every time I sang, people around me joined in, and they would sing. Like, if you see the optician, he starts singing. It's his store. It's not really open to public when we were there at that time in the morning, but it's still a public space. And Panahi is clearly a little cautious, right? He goes to close the door and stuff. But think about the sequence in Panahi's car with Aida.
Yeah.
That space is more in control because it's Panahi's car, and he knows how to film these things or get these things filmed, because he's filmed a film, made an entire film in his car. So, I mean, when I sang, when Jani Mariam, I'm singing Jani Mariam, Aida starts singing, and Panahi will not sing, but I'm sure he was like, really, yeah, in his heart he was singing. But also think about the classroom sequence in the end, where I sing and the teacher asks the girls not to sing, but they erupt in singing the song loudly. So even though, I mean, I am an outsider and I was singing, but every time I sang, this space of forbidden expression opened up. And that for me was so important. And that's when I realized that music has the potential to be such an important key, an important part of the film. And that's how music actually comes into the film. Because when I went from India to Iran, I didn't think music would be a part of the film. I was I was certain that poetry and cinema would be the two major strands. But music as an element really comes in on the field, because just that's why, going to the field and researching even for our PhDs is so important, and for cinema, of course. But the film it's really born out of lived experiences. The people you see in the film are like family to me. They're my friends. I I share all good things and some sad things with them. So I'm in very good touch with them. So yeah, the people you see in the film are not just, they're not never characters really. They're my friends, and it's my journey. And the film was born out of lived experiences.
So this was a 7-year long project, like we talked about already, and it is obviously very difficult to get the funding for a very long project like this. And while you said that you were doing your PhD along with making the film, and that helped you understand the film a lot more. But I think that is also a privilege that you could have, and not everyone can spend such a very long time in one film. So I want to know how your funding scene was and how you could get yourself through such a very long project. And what would you say, for other documentary filmmakers who cannot manage to do this? How would they still be able to get as close to the subject as possible without having the time or the resources as much as people have?
So I'd like to clarify one thing, that when you're making a film independent, especially if it's a documentary, and if you just take a quick look at the films that have been in the market, or have kind of are known in the last 3 years or so, 4 years, even 5 years. Documentaries take 5 years, 4 to 5 years to make minimum. It's very rare for a documentary to be made in 2 years or 1 year. It never happens. Unless it's a commissioned project by Netflix or one of the OTTs where, we're not talking about that kind of filming.
Yeah.
It is a privilege for sure. I mean, the fact that I could do a PhD and I could make a film. PhDs take 5 to 7 years, cannot take more. And I could do both together. I really believe that it's a privilege. It's because I could work. I was supported very strongly from my family. I got a lot of support. I got a fair amount of support from my friends and my team, actually, who knew that there isn't much money here, but they believed that the film is important and needs to be made. And so I was cushioned in this way. So I believe, and I feel filmmaking the way we do is a privilege, because a lot of people, because time is the most important thing. Giving this film wouldn't be this film if I wouldn't have given 5 6 years to it. Also, with films like ours, you'd often see filmmakers are producers themselves, unfortunately, in so many ways, because it takes you away from the creative parts which deserve your attention more. You are sucked into the world of raising finances, which can absolutely help you understand the market. I'm not saying it's a negative, but when you're doing that full time, you're making applications, you're making budgets, you are researching 20 applications that are coming up, and each application is different. It's not like you have a treatment which, like a log line or a synopsis or a statement, where it's you can apply with that document everywhere. Each application demands different lengths of a synopsis. Some ask for a 500-word synopsis, some ask for a 1,000-word synopsis. The questions are so many questions. Sometimes for one application you have to write 20 questions. It's a lot of work. It is the job of a producer. You have to raise finances. You have to talk to people. You have to talk to people from the market, commissioning people, producers, editors. It's a lot. And when you're doing that, and you're making the film, and in this case, going to Iran, making a film, talking in Persian, filming, doing the camera, doing my PhD, it takes time. It was crazy. So, and these things take time. But again, I cannot imagine making the film differently. I cannot imagine this being a film where I could have worked with a bigger team of, hiring a cinematographer or hiring someone for location sound or, shooting with lights and stuff. I mean, it is supposed to be this film which is a raw, out in the street kind of a film. Because in a place like Iran, you can't work with a team in the way that I was making them because you ask for permits and I can't ask for permits from the Islamic Republic, right?
You were working with a team, which was in India, and you were traveling to Iran, right?
So when I made the film, I did not have a team. It was me.
Okay.
So I did the camera, I did the location sound, I was producing it. Yeah, and I did everything myself in the production and development stage. After that, when I started editing, I was worked with editors. Franny first edited. I sat down and edited the film for the first 2 years. It was my first team, and then after 2 years, he got busy, so joined him. So yeah, it's not like both of them worked together, but both of them worked in two different phases.
So how does this work?
And then there was a consultant editor. After we kind of locked the cut, or sorry, not locked the cut. After we kind of had more or less final rough cut, I knew that because I spent so much time on the film, I'd need a different set of eyes to kind of comment on the structure. That was jumping much. That is jumping. So because I worked, Franny worked, Joy worked, we all worked for like long periods of time. So we all believe that we need someone else to make, to see the structure and comment on it and work around it. Because even though Berlinale accepted the structure, the rough cut that I gave to them, which was almost 80% there. The film was accepted at Berlinale with that cut, but I felt that there could be some things that could, little things could be moved around. I wasn't fully happy and satisfied, and I knew that I want to sit with someone who has that experience. So after that, we worked with Javeen for about 2.5 months, and then we launched it.
So how does this work? Because you are getting more and more involved with Iran by learning Persian and getting to know the language a lot better, and you are becoming very much a part of the community there. And when you're coming back and when you're telling your team how to edit or whatever, everything's post production that is happening, how are you getting the vision transferred to your team? How are you ensuring that they are as involved in the project as you are?
So in this case, Franny, I worked with first, he had come to Iran. So he also, I credited him with additional cameras. So there are a couple of scenes that he also shot. I've used. So he knew about the project. He's a long-term friend. So I've known him for a while. He knew what was happening. He knew what I was doing. And then he also came to Iran. So we were on the same page. Also, but of course he didn't know Persian. So after coming back, I had to translate the whole material so that he could, immerse more into it. And yeah, and then just constantly speaking with your editors because it's not possible that, your team is there with you all the time, but then constantly having this conversation that, this is what I want, this is the tenderness that I want in the film, this is the poetry that the shots should convey. This is my idea of music. I want some silence here, things like that. And I guess your team, if you are compatible with your team, because I was compatible with my team, so they knew me as a person So they also knew that, and also after so much conversation, they knew that this is what I want to make. So I came in later, but even with him, I think it really worked with him because he's the most patient person. So it took him some time, but he also got the hang of it, and we arrived at a final cut with him. And Pratik saw is there till the end, so we did have our discussions. So I mean, it works. It's just like working with friends sometimes to understand you. Also with Javeen, I didn't know her. We weren't friends from before. But Javeen, I wanted to work with because I knew she had also gone to Iran. And she's quite up there politically, she's quite expressive. I liked her work and I hoped she'd say yes. And she did. So I was looking for someone I did not have to explain things to, I was looking for someone who understand the idea behind it like this, who would be very comfortable working with something political. So my first choice was Javeen as a consultant.
I think you're almost nearing the end of the interview, and I would just like to ask, what are your future plans? What new project you're doing? Let's hear a bit more of that.
I want to say that I just finished this film and I want to take a long break, but no. I mean, I'm beginning. I'm just starting out. Beginning with my second film. It's also a documentary, a little different from the one that you've seen. But it's a film about health. It's about city. It's about my family, my mother, and a lot about the city. So yeah, sounds lovely.
For anyone who watched the film, Sultanic album becomes a very, very beautiful part of the film, and Shimoy has been singing this in pretty much all events, all screenings of the film as well.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she's a little tired of it at this point. And I would love to know how you got through the song. Yeah.
I'm not tired of singing the song because I love it so much, but then I feel like, when every festival I've gone to, people have asked me to sing this, I've told them, are you sure? Because I know other songs too. I think it's because and I sing something else. So yeah. I think it's it's the song has something to it which hooks you in a way. And you'd immediately start humming its tune.
Yeah.
It happened to all my editors. Like it happened to Praddy, it happened to Javeen, happened to Joydeep, and especially I remember after 2 months of intense editing, Javeen started singing the song. I've a lot of people on Instagram have sent me videos of them singing this song or humming the tune or audio track. So I'm very, very happy when I get these exchanges. The song happened to me just like that, when it's such a firstly, it is an eternal love song. Everybody knows the song in Iran by heart. Okay, so if the song is playing anywhere, it's very strange if no one sings it. Everyone will sing it, and this is such a song which actually plays everywhere in the bazaars, the cafes, on radio, on the buses. This song was literally everywhere. So if you ask me what is a song that you have taken from Iran, it is this. Because literally it was everywhere. And obviously got to me and I had to pick it up. And the moment I started picking it up, I took out the lyrics and I started singing it. I realized that I know the tune because it's very similar to Dola Soki, I Will Bring You Back. And I was like, I know the tune, I know what chord to play after this. So I felt like I know the song, it's just that I didn't know the words. It's in a different language. So I picked it up and they sing it with me. So it's how it happened, that this is how it all came together.
Iranians here, would you like to join in?
Yes. Just hum along even if you don't know the words. There you go.
ये दिल मीगे बेराम बेराम ये دلم میگه نرم نرم طاقت نداره دلم پیشش که زیبا زیبا خیلی کوچیکه دنیا دنیا با یاد
تو
تو هم
هر جا ترکت نکنم.
دلم را شکستی پیمان یاری به قلبم تو بستی با من پیوستی کنون اگر از تو دورم به هر جا بر یاد دیگر نبندم سرشارم از آرزو That was the most out of tune. I have friends in Iran who I'm going to show this video to. and this is so much support, so much love, and we don't have words to express how thankful we are.